As you just heard, the candidates were on the attack today, slamming each other's economic plans while they were trying to sell themselves as the sturdy choice to lead us out of this crisis. With me now to face off on the question of who is showing more leadership on the economy, our Obama supporter, Chris Van Hollen. He's Democratic Congressman from Maryland and chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign. We also have McCain supporter, Darrell, Issa, Republican Congressman from California. Darrell, let me begin with you. Why did John McCain's poll numbers seem to drop every time the Dow drops?
Well, Joe, it's very clear that the Democrats have done a good job of trying to say that John McCain is the second coming of George W. Bush. And when you see mistakes made in the 8th year of a president's term that clearly fall on his watch, it's going to have a natural link. What people forget is that John McCain has fought this administration on some critical issues, fought Democrats, particularly on these Democrat inventions of Freddie and Fannie that have been used or abused and are at the center of the crisis. So, you know, yes, he votes like I do often with the president, but let's talk about the important differences, especially related to this crisis.
And you know, Chris, a lot of Republicans are talking about how Freddie and Fannie were at the base of this crisis. Of course, lending standards were lessened, so poorer Americans could afford to get homes, even if they didn't qualify for the loans. Barack Obama didn't fight that any more than John McCain did he?
Well, Joe, what we're experiencing now is collective amnesia on the part of our Republican colleagues. After all, they've had a monopoly in Washington, the White House and the Congress, for 6 of the last 8 years. They did absolutely nothing on this. In the first 2 years that the Democrats have been in charge of Congress.
I have to stop you for a second, Chris. Hold on, Chris, because what you said just is not true. There are quotes from 2003 of the Bush White House trying to get Democrats to stand shoulder to shoulder with him on reforming Fannie and Freddie. And Barney Frank was one of the leaders fighting against that reform. You know that, and I know that.
Well, and Joe, you know that.
Let Chris respond.
Joe,
let Chris respond.
Joe, can you let me respond, please? Can you let me respond?
That's why I just said, when I say let Chris respond, that means, Chris, you can respond. Now respond.
Thank you. The Republican chairman of the Financial Services Committee is quoted over and over now saying he tried to reform the GSEs, Fannie and Freddie, and the Bush administration stood in his way. That's what he said. Now, the problem McCain's got is not just the fact that he's been supporting the Bush economic record, it's that he has been zigzagging all over the place during this economic crisis. And the fact of the matter is, just the other night at the debate, he said he had a new proposal. It wasn't Barack Obama's, it wasn't George Bush's, and he announced a proposal that the Congress had already enacted. The Congress had already given the federal agencies the authority to go in and buy up some of these loans if banks agreed to take part of the hit. And so now McCain's come up with a proposal that says the taxpayer gets to take the entire hit, and the banks will get off scot-free for making irresponsible loans. And so it's not just a record of voting with Bush, it's the fact that he's been all over the place.
All right, yeah, well, Darrell, you got to let me ask you a question before you jump in, because Chris makes a great point.
In fairness, the point that Chris is making is false.
Please, Darrell, listen to me. You've got to let me ask you a question. You're wasting our time. I'm going to ask you the question. Darrell talked about how McCain has been zigzagging over the past 2 or 3 weeks. I've talked to Republican senators and congressmen that are pulling their hair out saying, what is this guy doing? He suspends his campaign. He parachutes into Washington. He leaves. The crisis blows up again. You've got to admit, Democrats have been calling him erratic. That word fits John McCain right now, doesn't it?
Well, I certainly can make a little honesty here on what Chris has been alluding to. First of all, on a straight party line vote, or almost straight party line vote, the House passed a bill to try to reform Fannie and Freddie. It died in the Senate. John McCain was a leader in the Senate to try to make it go forward. It was the Democrats that blocked it because this has been their baby. It was the Chris Dodds and so on.
All right, let's talk about the last 2 weeks. Has he been erratic?
Certainly, John McCain is a maverick, and John McCain will try to find, as best he can, ways to make a difference. Now, he's not the president. If he were in the White House today, I would hold him to a standard of bringing a plan and living with it. But in fact, what he's really doing is